The water is hot, but Kairi is still shivering. Ever since she invited Hikaru over, the air in her own home has felt thinner, charged with a frequency she can't tune out. She sinks into the tub, the splash echoing against the tiles as she stares at nothing. I guess it was still too early to invite her over. She wasn't born with this icy composure. She had constructed a fortress one brick at a time. While her brother basked in the sun, Kairi withered under the gaze of strangers who treated her like a porcelain doll. Their kindness felt like a threat, a weight she never asked to carry. Then came the boys with their sudden, shallow confessions. Their "I like yous" landing like heavy stones. The classroom was a minefield of whispers. Every time another boy confessed to the Ice Queen, the girls sharpened their knives. She may look quiet, but don't you think she's just trying to look good to the boys? Kairi kept her head down, the noise of their judgment becoming a permanent static in her ears, until a loud voice cut through the smog, demanding an end to the meanness. She didn't know how to handle them, the girl who fought for her and the boy who stood by with a casual, easy warmth. Kairi could only fidget, her fingers tracing the edge of her desk as she tried to process the first genuine kindness she'd ever received. They were curious about her, not just the doll face the others saw. For a moment, the world didn't feel like a cage. They got angry on her behalf, standing in the gap between her shyness and the world's expectations. She reached a simple, terrifying realization. Because of them, she might actually be able to like people, but the world doesn't stay soft. Another confession, another boy professing love at first sight, and the warmth vanishes. Kairi stares at the envelope as if it's garbage. Sorry, but I'm not interested. She started to see love for what it was, a shallow physical transaction. A headline on a screen confirmed her darkest suspicions. Love at first sight is nothing more than lust. It's disgusting. Why fall for someone just because of their face if their soul is a void? She retreated further, finding the only calm scenes in the presence of her two predictable friends. The air was thick with it again, crushes, chocolates, and the agonizing weight of 3 whole years of longing. Kairi watched them whisper about Valentine's Day, their faces flushed with a hope she found exhausting. To her, it was just a countdown to inevitable disappointment. They were idealizing the very thing that made her skin crawl. Even her brother wasn't immune. A cycle of new girlfriends every 3 months that only proved her point. Romance wasn't a connection. It functioned as a rotating door for jerks. She wasn't lonely. She had this, the walk home, the shared laughter, the safety of friends who didn't want anything from her. Just watching others was enough, until the world decided to break the one rule she had left. A sob in the hallway. Shiori is hunched over, the silence of the classroom shattered. Kairi freezes, her hand hovering in the air. The comfort is gone, replaced by the jagged reality of a heart actually breaking. The truth is a punch to the gut. Takeshita doesn't want Shiori. He wants Kairi. He's never even spoken to her, yet he likes her. It's the same shallow, surface-level poison all over again. To fall in love with just what's on the surface, it doesn't suit Shiori. Only good-looking people have the luxury of being liked for nothing at all. Kairi sees the hurt in Shiori's eyes and feels the distance opening up like a chasm. Her hands clench the fabric of her skirt, the physical sensation of guilt mingling with her mounting disgust. The thoughts won't stop. They swarm in the dark, a chorus of voices telling her that love is the rot at the center of everything. If there was no love, no one would have to feel this bad. Disgusting, disgusting, disgusting. It feels like something is eating her from the inside out. She wants to purge it, to be empty and cold and untouchable. But the world keeps calling her back, tapping on her desk, asking for a part of her she's already decided to kill. Even graduation didn't fix it. The wall was always there, invisible, cold, and impenetrable. She smiled for the photos, but she was already gone, hiding behind a mask that no one, not even her best friends, knew how to crack. She thought she was safe. She thought she'd mastered the art of being close without actually being there. Then, Kurata Hikaru appeared, breaking through the static with a request that felt like a challenge to her entire worldview. The atmosphere shifts, becoming heavy and electric. Hikaru is trembling, her face a bright, undeniable red. Kairi watches her, the old disgust bubbling up, prepared for another shallow declaration of love from a stranger. Hikaru bows, her voice desperate. "I love you, Kira-san. Please reject me." The words don't make sense. It's not the script Kyrie has memorized. It's something new, something absurdly sincere. The shiver isn't from the cold. It's the thrill of the trap. Kyrie sees an opportunity to take all that built-up disgust and give it back to the world. If Hikaru is determined to be ruined by love, Kyrie is more than happy to be the one to do it. All right then, I'll reject you. She watches Hikaru celebrate her own downfall, the girl's gratitude feeling like a physical weight. Kyrie's heart is racing, but she tells herself it's just the excitement of the hunt. She wants to see how far this love will take her. How about we try being lovers? The words are a lie, a hook set deep. As Kyrie pours a glass of milk in the safety of her kitchen, she's already calculating her next move, unaware that the predator is slowly becoming the prey. Rikuto can see through the mask, or at least he's trying to. He asks about Hikaru, sensing the shift in the air. Kyrie keeps her voice flat, her eyes full of a performative hate she's starting to find harder to maintain. She calls her clumsy, studious, and easy to understand. But as the words leave her mouth, they feel inadequate. Hikaru dreams of being rich, of eating ice cream in a penthouse, a vision so vivid and silly that it starts to feel dangerously real. She watches Hikaru through the classroom window, a silent observer in her own life. She tells herself she's just preparing for their date, but her gaze lingers on the way Hikaru's hair falls over her notebook. She sneaks a look at the page. It's not just study notes, it's a list of summer vacation date ideas, skipping stones, swimming pools, picnics with bentos. It's so earnest, so terrifyingly human, that Kyrie's breath hitches. Welcome back. Hikaru's smile is a solar flare, blinding and hot. Kyrie stammers, her cool exterior finally showing a crack. She tries to deflect, to act like she was judging the notes, but the heat in her own face is betraying her. Kyrie pushes, asking why someone so clumsy would work so hard. Hikaru admits she doesn't love studying. She just wants to reach her dream. It's a simple, honest truth that makes Kyrie's manipulations feel small and petty. It's about her mom, a single parent, strong and kind, but struggling. Hikaru isn't just greedy. She's a daughter who wants to be someone her mother can rely on. The disgusting motivation Kyrie imagined is actually a profound act of love. She was a clumsy child, always failing at everything she tried. The bandages on her fingers were a testament to her uselessness. She watched her mother work until she coughed, and the young Hikaru realized that whatever you like wasn't enough, she had to be useful. She poured everything into her books. If she couldn't be naturally talented, she would be remarkably disciplined. Every page turned was a step away from poverty, and a step toward a world where she could protect the person she loved. The silence in the classroom is absolute. Kyrie stares at Hikaru, the girl who is so much bigger on the inside than she ever gave her credit for. The ice is melting, and the sound of it breaking is the only thing she can hear. Hikaru tries to laugh it off, calling it embarrassing, but Kyrie isn't listening to the words anymore. She's listening to the thudding in her own chest. It's a rhythmic, terrifying drumbeat that she can't ignore. This isn't the excitement of the hunt. This is something else. A sharp, localized pain that feels like a beginning. Her hand goes to her chest, trying to still the vibration. Why only this time does my chest hurt? The truth is a mirror she doesn't want to look into. She knew what she felt before wasn't love. It was just a way to vent her own bitterness. She didn't care about Hikaru's feelings or her reasons. She just wanted to satisfy her own dark desires. She thoughtlessly wanted to see Hikaru fall, never realizing that she was the one sinking. How is she any different from the people she hated? The shallow lust she despised was exactly the weapon she tried to use. Hikaru is worried now, her face inches away. She offers to cancel the date, to go to the nurse's office. Kyrie can only murmur a weak denial, the notebook in her hand feeling like an anchor. They decide to stay, to study in the classroom instead of going out. The door slides shut, and the silence returns, heavier than before. Hikaru's presence lingers in the air, the scent of her, the echo of her dream. Kyrie stares at the empty hallway, her own reflection in the window looking like a stranger. The clatter of the bottle landing is the only sound in the courtyard. Kyrie leans her forehead against the cool glass of the machine. I'm the worst, aren't I? She rejected everyone else as shallow, yet she feels the same terrifying pull toward the girl waiting for her upstairs. The hallway blurs into gray, leaving only the warmth of the bottle and the heat in her cheeks. The question she's been running from has finally caught up. It's not a trap anymore. It's not a game. She wants to be with her. So this is love. The air in the room is suffocating, thick with a resentment that's been brewing for years. Hikaru is trapped in the replay of her childhood, where love isn't a gift, but a life sentence of regret. Her mother's shadow looms over her, a constant reminder of every opportunity lost to the burden of a child. The lecture never changes, a rhythmic beat of misery until the final, jagged blow lands. If only I didn't have Hikaru. Hikaru bolts upright, her heart hammering against her ribs like a trapped bird. The sweat is real, the terror is fresh, but the person standing over her isn't a ghost. It's Rikuto, checking in with a concerned tilt of his head. The silver-haired boy is the picture of gentleness, a sharp contrast to the acid-washed memories she just clawed her way out of. She grips the sheets, grounding herself in the quiet of the room as she lies. I just had a weird dream. Breakfast is a transaction. A few yen notes left on the table beside a note about overtime. This is how her mother communicates. Every have a good day feels like a script she's reading to a stranger. As Hikaru shoulders her bag and heads for the door, the silence of the house echoes with the one line the real woman would never actually say aloud, but that Hikaru hears in every creak of the floorboards. But that was just a dream, and reality has a way of demanding focus. Hikaru shakes off the morning chill as she looks over her latest results. She managed to dodge the bullet this time, passing every subject despite the absolute chaos of her internal life. School life is back in session, and cleaning duty with Kairi is the only thing on the menu. Kairi stands there, silver hair catching the light, looking every bit the untouchable idol Hikaru is terrified of disappointing. As they split up for chores, Hikaru is already spiraling. She's convinced her simple summer ideas like cloud gazing are way too childish for someone as elegant as Kairi. Hikaru is scrubbing the floors like she's trying to erase her own embarrassment. She's overanalyzing everything. Did Kairi look pale because she's sick? Or was she just bored to death by the idea of looking for four-leaf clovers? The more she scrubs, the more she's convinced her date list is a total disaster. She doesn't even notice Ryo Tsuchihira sneaking up behind her until the twin tails are practically in her face. Ryo stares at the porcelain throne like it's a religious artifact. Hikaru was so lost in her Kairi-induced panic that she accidentally polished the toilet into another dimension. But Ryo isn't just here for the janitorial excellence. She leans in, eyes sharp and playful, and goes straight for the jugular. When you said you were lost in thought, could it be about Kairi? It turns out Ryo has a history with the school's ice queen that goes back to middle school. Hikaru watches them from a distance, feeling like an outsider in a conversation she desperately wants to join. If Ryo knows how to read Kairi's moods, then she's the only person who can help. Hikaru's grip tightens on the mop handle. She isn't just cleaning anymore, she's on a mission to figure out how to make Kairi smile. Hikaru practically teleports to the bench outside to corner Ryo for advice. She's expecting a secret handbook on Kairi, but Ryo's perspective is surprisingly grounded. It turns out Kairi wasn't always this popular back in the day. She was the girl who stayed on the fringes, wary of everyone who tried to get close. They talk about how Kairi used to bow out of social circles, keeping a wall between herself and the rest of the world. Ryo is genuinely shocked that Hikaru managed to tear those walls down so fast. It makes Hikaru wonder, is she really that special? Or is Kairi just finally tired of being lonely? Ryo is like a human sunbeam, suggesting the beach, camping, and amusement parks, with a blindingly cheerful grin. But fun costs money, and Hikaru's pockets are as empty as her social calendar. Sensing a golden opportunity, Ryo drops the ultimate hook, a summer job at her family's restaurant. It's the perfect way to fund the dream dates Hikaru's been sketching in her notebook. Ryo is moving at light speed, already planning the referral, while Hikaru is stuck in a loop of self-doubt. She's terrified her lack of coordination will turn a busy restaurant into a disaster zone. She practically begs Ryo to reconsider. Why? Because I'm not an efficient worker. You saw me cleaning the toilets earlier, right? Ryo just sees the upside, sparkling, clean toilets for everyone. But Hikaru is performing a full-scale risk assessment in her head. She's worried about her qualifications, her study schedule, and whether she's even allowed to have a life outside of her mother's expectations. She's a vibrating mess of indecision until Ryo stops the spiral with a single, pointed question. Ryo slams her hand down, the sound echoing through the courtyard. Don't you want to make Kairi happy? The scales in Hikaru's mind instantly tip. All the anxiety, the exams and the rules are crushed under the weight of one simple desire. She screams her answer with every ounce of her soul. I do. With the contract signed in spirit, Hikaru is practically bowing her way into the new job. But just as she starts to feel good about the progress, Reo gets this terrifying glint in her eye. She isn't just offering a job, she's looking for a way to peel back the layers of Hikaru's secret obsession. Hikaru is starting to realize she might have just traded one master for another. Reo brushes off the intensity with a casual laugh, claiming she's just a simple person who wanted to work with a friend. But as she walks away, Hikaru is left standing in the fading light. The reality of the commitment she just made is starting to sink in, but for the first time it doesn't feel like a mistake. Back at her desk, Hikaru watches the staff at work, realizing she's finally stepping into her own story. Her mother's voice, the one that told her love was a trap, is still there, but it's getting quieter. She picks up her pen, her hand steady, as she decides to rewrite the rules. She isn't going to live in fear of a dream anymore. The next morning, Hikaru doesn't just show up, she unveils a manifesto. Her new date ideas list is so long it practically has its own table of contents. She slams the notebook onto the desk with a triumphant cry. Tada! This isn't just a list, it's a statement of intent. Kairi stares at the wall of text, her expression unreadable behind the notebook. The classroom buzzes around them, but Hikaru is hyper-focused on Kairi's every micro-expression. She's already starting to second-guess herself again. Maybe the part-time job was too much. Maybe the list is too intense. She starts mumbling to herself, convinced she's already failed. But Kairi isn't angry. Beneath that silver fringe, her face is glowing like a furnace. She's trying so hard to maintain her composure, but the sheer sincerity of Hikaru's effort is short-circuiting her brain. All she can see is cuteness, while Hikaru is panicking, convinced she's looking at a girl who's about to file a restraining order. Kairi manages to choke out a single word. Yeah. Hikaru is vibrating with nervous energy, waiting for Kairi to pick a single destination. But the question of where is irrelevant when the goal is just proximity. Hikaru takes a breath and lets the truth fly, her voice clear and desperate. I want to go on all of them. The silence in the classroom breaks, not with a rejection, but with a sound Hikaru has never heard before. Kairi laughs, a genuine, bright, heart-stopping sound that fills the space between them. Her face crinkles up, the stoic mask completely shattered by a joy that looks like summer itself. Ah ha ha, then let's go on all of them. Hikaru collapses onto her bed later that evening, the echo of that laugh still ringing in her ears. She's on top of the world, the job is set, the dates are planned, and for the first time, her future feels like something she's actually choosing. She's a flurry of limbs and excitement, shouting a quiet yeah to the empty ceiling. Studying, love, and work, she's going to master them all. But as the adrenaline fades, the shadow of her mother returns. She knows the rules. A student's only duty is to study. Getting a job without permission, letting her grades slip for a crush, it's everything she was told would ruin her. She stares at her phone, the weight of the secret starting to press down on her chest again. How is she supposed to explain any of this? The phone vibrates, a sharp mechanical buzz that cuts through her thoughts. Hikaru picks it up expecting a lecture or a check-in, but the voice on the other end is cold and frantic. Masumi-san just collapsed. She's being taken to the hospital right now. The world stops. The notebook, the summer plans, the laugh, it all turns to ash in an instant. Hikaru can only manage one whispered, broken word. What? The sterile white of the hospital room hasn't softened her mother's edge. Even in a gown, Kurata Masumi radiates the kind of former delinquent energy that can stop a heart faster than a medical emergency. She isn't interested in a tearful reunion or a long bedside vigil. She looks at her daughter with a sharp, familiar glare and snaps. Hurry up and go to school already. Hikaru fumbles with a change of clothes, her guilt heavy as the bag she's carrying. She tries to offer a solution, a part-time job to take the pressure off, a way to handle things herself. But her mother cuts through the excuses with a single absolute no need. It's the sound of a door slamming shut on Hikaru's attempt to be the savior. The silence in the room stretches thin. Hikaru's head drops, the truth finally spilling out, the grades that have already cratered, the focus that's been redirected elsewhere. Her mother watches the back of her daughter's head, her voice dropping an octave as she pieces together the only reason a girl like Hikaru would let her future slip. She asks the one question Hikaru was terrified to hear. She fell in love, didn't she? Suddenly, the room is 50 degrees colder. Masumi-san doesn't just look angry, she looks like she's about to collect a debt in blood. She looms over Hikaru, knuckles cracking, the hospital gown doing nothing to hide the aura of a woman who once ruled the streets. She warns her that love makes people go crazy, then demands to know what kind of guy tricked her. Hikaru can barely squeak out the correction, "I fell in love with a girl at first sight." The fire in her mother's eyes dies down, replaced by a weary, haunting recognition. She sees it now the same reckless, all in devotion that she once lived through. She tells Hikaru she's exactly like her father. Hikaru swallows hard, the air thick with a history that's always been kept in the shadows, and finally asks to know the truth about him. It's a story Masumi was going to wait until Hikaru was an adult to tell. She recounts the hostess club where she worked, and the man who shouldn't have been there. A clumsy, earnest idiot who chased after her for years. He didn't have a suave bone in his body, but he brought her flowers and a promise of happiness that she finally, foolishly, believed in. She stares at her hands, admitting she wasn't ready to be a mother or a wife, but she was desperate to protect Hikaru from a future where love turns bitter. She tells her daughter about the night he came to her club and the cracks in their perfect world that were already beginning to show. In her memory, he's always tripping over his own feet. He was a clumsy idiot who spent years chasing a woman out of his league, always showing up with a nervous smile and a bouquet of roses. Masumi-san watches that ghost of a man and admits she truly believed he could be the one to make her happy. But the happiness was a thin veneer. While Masumi felt satisfied with the bare necessities, her husband was drowning. He had taken on a mountain of debt, a secret he guarded with a terrified intensity, certain that if the truth came out, he'd lose her forever. By the time the collection notices arrived, he was already cornered. The tragedy wasn't that he left, it was that he thought leaving was a kindness. He asked for a divorce while she was pregnant, convinced that disappearing was the only way to save them from his ruin. He told her it was because he'd made their lives go crazy, a word Masumi has carried like a scar ever since. She looks at her daughter and admits that she too was part of that madness. Hikaru's hands clench in her lap. She finally understands the warning. It wasn't a rule against her happiness, but a guardrail against her own nature. Her mother knows how much she resembles her father, that same clumsy heart that would burn the world down just to stay close to someone. Masumi looks at the back of her daughter's head, the weight of her own failure pressing down. She's terrified that Hikaru will end up losing everything just like him, because she never learned how to make love and life work together. She didn't want to stop her daughter from falling, she just didn't know how to catch her. Hikaru flashes back to the moments where her control slipped. The laughter, the distraction, the way her hard work seemed to dissolve the moment she looked at Kairi. She realizes her mother was right to worry. She is clumsy, she is in over her head, and she's already halfway to falling lower and lower. But Hikaru doesn't bow her head. She acknowledges the risk and the resemblance, but she refuses to accept the same end. She looks her mother in the eye and declares that she will find a way to make everything come true, without missing out on my dreams or my love. There is no more awkwardness, no more blushing. Just a girl standing in a hospital room with a gaze that could cut glass. She doesn't ask for permission, she asks for faith. She delivers 2 words that carry the weight of her entire future: trust me. Masumi-san is silent for a long beat, searching her daughter's face for any sign of the weakness she fears. But all she finds is resolve. A small, almost imperceptible shift in her expression signals her surrender. If Hikaru is going to be this stubborn, then she'll just have to prove it. The somber mood evaporates as quickly as it arrived. Masumi-san isn't exactly giving a warm hug, she's issuing a challenge. She tells Hikaru she's not completely convinced just yet, and if she finds that magical way to have everything, she better show her how it's done. Then comes the physical enforcement. A rapid-fire volley of head pokes that sends Hikaru reeling. Masumi-san growls that if those grades don't climb back up, she'll personally turn Hikaru into a person who can only study. It's the kind of threat that only a mother and a former delinquent can make sound like a death sentence. Hikaru practically vibrates out of the hospital ward. The weight is still there, but now she's the one carrying it, not the other way around. She looks back one last time, a bright, fierce smile on her face, and promises, I will definitely find a way. The morning text was a jolt of reality for Kairi. Seeing Hikaru at the lockers, late but alive, is the first real breath she's taken all day. She keeps her voice cool, asking if her mother is all right, but the way she's looking at Hikaru betrays a flicker of genuine, unmanipulated worry. Hikaru is a human whirlwind of ambition. She suggests a post-school trip to McDonald's, and before Kairi can even process the change in energy, Hikaru is already living in a future where she's super rich, a highly educated genius, and most importantly, a love master. It's absurd, it's intense, and it's pure Hikaru. She's at the starting line for everything, or at least that's what she tells herself between violent coughing fits. She downs her walk-shake with a desperation that suggests it's high-octane fuel for her soul. Kairi watches her from across the tray, visibly concerned that the girl she loves might actually vibrate out of existence before they finish their fries. But then, the hyperactive shield drops for a second. Hikaru looks at Kairi, the neon lights of the fast food joint reflecting in her eyes, and says it simply, "This might be the happiest I've ever been." Kairi freezes, the cynical retort she usually keeps ready completely failing to materialize. They wander toward the station, the night air cooling the manic heat of Hikaru's plans. They joke about churro flavors and destruction chocolate, a low-stakes conversation that feels like a victory after the morning's crisis. Hikaru is walking on air, and Kairi is letting herself be pulled along for the ride. They stop at the entrance, the moment hanging between them. Hikaru is filled with that dangerous, wonderful motivation again. She grabs Kairi's hand, her face burning, and manages to stutter out the request, "How about a goodbye kiss or something?" The second the words are out, she's already trying to claw them back into her mouth. Kairi doesn't laugh. She doesn't tease. She just steps into Hikaru's space, the station noise fading into a dull hum. She whispers, "It's fine," her eyes half closed, and for the first time, she's the one closing the distance, her hand brushing against Hikaru's skin like a question. The world stops at the station gates. It's a soft, clumsy collision, a moment where the manipulation and the ambition and the fear finally give way to something simple. The cool night air is forgotten in the heat of the touch, a silent promise made in the middle of a commute. Kairi pulls away, her usual composure in tatters as she hides a laugh behind her hand. "It's embarrassing, right?" she asks. But Hikaru isn't embarrassed. She's soaring. She squeals with a joy that's almost painful to listen to, her internal monologue shouting that she can do anything as long as Kairi is there. The invincible feeling lasts exactly until her foot hits an uneven paving stone. Hikaru goes down in a flurry of limbs and school supplies, a quick reminder from the universe that she's still her father's daughter. She picks herself up, slapping her cheeks to get it together, certain that Kairi is going to tear her apart for being such a disaster. But as Hikaru waits for the punchline, it never comes. She realizes with a start that Kairi hasn't teased her in a long time. The person who used to find her instability exciting has stopped poking at the bruises. Just recently, whenever Kairi had the chance to mess with her, she chose to be sincere instead. The game has changed, and Hikaru is just now realizing how far they've both fallen. Work life is actually going well? After the storm of the hospital, the rhythm of the Tsuchihira diner is a sanctuary, especially with Ryo-san providing the ultimate ego boost. She beams at Hikaru, practically sparkling as she delivers the verdict, "You really did a good job." But the sanctuary of the diner is nothing compared to the high-stakes battlefield of a first real date. Hikaru stands at the station, white-knuckling her bag and checking her reflection in every glass surface available. The internal monologue is a frantic loop of, "I don't look weird, do I?" until a familiar voice cuts through the static. Kairi arrives looking like she stepped out of a catalog, effortless and devastating. Hikaru's brain simply short-circuits at the sight of her, the world narrowing down to the girl in front of her. She can barely breathe, let alone play it cool, as she blurted out a breathless, Cute." The old Kairi would have shredded her for that stutter. But this Kairi just smiles, a soft, dangerous thing that makes Hikaru's heart do gymnastics. She steps closer, the air between them suddenly heavy and warm. "You look super cute," Kairi says, and Hikaru officially goes into meltdown mode. The mood shifts to a slight prickling jealousy when Hikaru realizes the staff at the diner already call her girlfriend by her first name. It's a small realization, but it stings like she's the only one left standing behind a wall of formalities. Hikaru gathers her courage, her face set in a look of grim determination, as she makes her demand. She wants in on that intimacy. She's desperate to express her feelings out loud. Kairi blushes, looking away as she gives the okay, and Hikaru practically vibrates with victory. Kairi-san. On the train, the reality sets in. Hikaru watches Kairi out of the corner of her eye, noting how calm she seems. The internal pressure is mounting. Hikaru isn't just here to have fun. She's on a mission to prove herself as the perfect partner. She has to make sure Kairi has the best day of her life, no matter what. They hit the amusement park, and the scale of it almost knocks Hikaru over. It's a sensory overload of lights, noise, and potential disasters. She clenches her fists, her eyes turning into literal stars as she makes a silent vow, "I'll definitely make this amusement park date a success." The day blurs into a frantic montage of animal ear headbands, touristy photos, and the kind of high-speed thrills that leave Hikaru screaming while Kairi remains impossibly composed. Every moment is a checkmark on Hikaru's mental list of things that couples do. Even the churro stand becomes a crisis of choice for Hikaru. She wants everything, but her stomach has limits. Kairi steps in with a solution that's almost too romantic to handle, suggesting they just share. Half-seas shouldn't feel this intimate, but here we are. Kairi leans in, her eyes locking onto Hikaru's with a playful, predatory softness. She knows exactly what she's doing. She wants to be fed, and she wants to feed Hikaru. It's a total power move disguised as a sweet gesture. Hikaru's brain melts as she realizes she's being completely led around by the nose. Desperate to regain some ground, Hikaru scans the map for something Kairi might enjoy. She spots the haunted house of the Zodiac. Kairi mentions she likes horror, and Hikaru sees her opening. She'll be the brave one. She'll be the protector. It's a perfect plan with zero flaws. Except Hikaru is currently vibrating so hard she might phase through the floor. She insists she's fine, great even, claiming her trembling is just excitement. She plasters a smile on her face and marches toward the entrance, lying through her teeth. "I'll be perfectly fine." It's a children's attraction. There are cartoon snakes and smiling cows. And Hikaru is losing her absolute mind. Every pop of a mechanical prop sends her into a fresh spiral of terror. By the time they emerge, she's a weeping mess, her dignity left somewhere between the papier-mâché snake and the exit sign. The shame is heavy. Hikaru huddles on a bench, convinced she's ruined the cool image she spent all morning building. She expects a joke, a jab, anything. But Kairi just looks at her with a soft, almost worried expression, apologizing for making her uncomfortable. It feels wrong. Kairi suggests they rest, offering to go get drinks while Hikaru recovers. Her kindness is relentless, and it's starting to freak Hikaru out. The sharp edges of the person who used to find Hikaru's suffering exciting have completely vanished, replaced by a devastatingly considerate girlfriend. Left alone, Hikaru spirals. She's convinced that if she stays this awkward and useless, Kairi is going to get bored. The thought of being a burden, of Kairi having to constantly manage her emotions, is more terrifying than any haunted house. She has to fix this. She has to take the lead. Then it hits her. Looking back at the last few weeks, the invincible feeling wasn't because Hikaru was suddenly doing well, it was because Kairi was holding back. She's been matching Hikaru's pace, smoothing over the bumps, and hiding her own feelings to keep Hikaru from breaking. Kairi returns, and Hikaru nearly jumps out of her skin. She tries to plaster on a smile, insisting she's fine and ready for the next big thing. She points toward the skyline, the ultimate date destination. It's time for the Ferris wheel. They climb into the small glass box and the world begins to fall away. The higher they go, the quieter it gets, the park below shrinking until it's just a toy set. Hikaru stares out at the horizon, her heart hammering against her ribs for a very different reason now. The silence in the gondola is deafening. Hikaru tries to point out landmarks, tries to talk about the night parade, tries taking full responsibility for the mood, but it's forced, and they both know it. Every word she speaks feels like it's landing with a thud. When the topic of the parade comes up, Kairi immediately agrees to go where it's crowded, even though Hikaru knows she hates noise. That's the final straw. The "oh" that escapes Hikaru's lips isn't surprise. It's the sound of a heart breaking under the sheer pressure of too much kindness. The air in the gondola turns freezing. Hikaru stares at her lap, her hands trembling. She can't keep this up. She can't pretend that this one-sided care is what a relationship is supposed to look like. She looks up, her eyes bright with a dangerous sort of honesty. She drops the act. No more perfect girlfriend, no more pretending to be brave. She throws the past back at Kairi, reminding her of the person she used to be, the one who wanted to watch Hikaru fail. You said you wanted to see me fall even lower. Kairi's face is a mask of cool indifference, but there's a flicker of something else behind it. Fear? Guilt? She tries to brush it off, to make it Hikaru's problem. She gives her that familiar, empty dismissal. It's just your imagination. Kairi tells her it wouldn't be an inconvenience anyway, that she doesn't need to care about her feelings. And that's where Hikaru breaks. She leans forward, her voice cracking the silence of the cabin like a thunderbolt. Kairi's eyes go wide, the composure finally shattering as Hikaru screams the truth at her. I do care.